How does one go about selling themselves to themselves?
Yourself to yourself begins with knowing and trusting that you have value to add. A lot of us don't even believe we have value before we've put ourselves out there. And that translates itself into energy. When you believe in your value, what you have to offer the world, people feel that energy because you believe in what you have to offer the world. People do not buy what you sell as much as they buy into your energy. What is the energy that you are admitting to the world? Self-awareness is crucial. You cannot have self-development without self-awareness, because awareness is the beginning of true wisdom. It is understanding yourself, who you are, what your strengths and what your weaknesses are. Once you know where you are right now today, you can then create a plan on how to move forward to where you want to be. When you show up in the best way you can, anyone that comes into your orbit, they will be infected with your energy in a positive way. They will say, wow, look at what you've done, look at how you've changed, look at how you've transformed. Can you share a little bit about how you've done so with me? And that's when they're ready. That's what we have to do first, be that change, and then that will influence them to be interested in how to get a little bit of what you have.
What can I do to make the most of life?
Knowing how short life is and knowing that there is going to be an end point actually makes life meaningful. Because if there was no end point, if you lived forever, where is the urgency? But when there is an end point, it gives a sense of urgency. You've got to take action now in order to create a better future. When you live from a place of gratitude, you realize you live in abundance.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. I'm your host, Celine Chenoy. Thank you to all of you who return every week to tune in to become a better version of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and rate our show if you enjoyed this episode. Your energy is your power. It fuels your success and empowers you to reach your full potential. Understanding and managing your energy not only prevents exhaustion, stress, and overwhelm, but also enhances your productivity and well-being. If this is a concern for you, then you'll love my conversation with award-winning life coach Simon Alexander Ong, who will introduce us to the art and science of energy management, a topic that's crucial to our personal success. Simon Alexander Ong is an award-winning personal development entrepreneur and coach. His work has seen him invited onto Sky News, BBC Radio London, and LBC Radio, and he has been featured in HuffPost, Forbes, Virgin, and The Guardian. Simon regularly keynotes for companies and conferences, including those organized by Google, the London School of Economics, and the World Business and Executive Coach Summit. Simon will share his expert insights on harnessing your natural energy to identify your most energized state. His practical approach will guide you on when to exert yourself and when to take a step back, enabling you to work sustainably towards your goals and feel ready to tackle any challenge. Hi, Simon. How are you doing today?
Doing great and fantastic to meet Celine.
Oh, it's fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I actually discovered your work just over a month ago. Your YouTube video popped into my feed, and the video was titled, "I'm 40. If you're in your 20s or 30s, watch this." Since we're both in our 40s, I was intrigued. I was like, I have to hear what he has to say. And I absolutely loved what you shared because I resonated with almost everything. And then I continued to watch some of your other videos, and then I was impressed. I was like, okay, I need to reach out to him and get him on the show. And you were kind enough to accept my invitation, and here we are making it happen.
I love how the internet works. I mean, this is what social media is all about. It's about being social, reaching out, creating connections, and opening opportunities like this.
Yeah. And it seems like that video went viral. God, it's got like
I
5
mean,
million views or something.
I had no idea. I mean, I only started my YouTube channel in early 2024.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, this is going to be my challenge this year.
Yeah.
I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to try and get a couple of videos out a month and just see where it goes. And within 10 months, we went through 100,000 subscribers.
That's
and that
amazing.
video was a big driver of that growth. And I think now we are just shy of 3 million views for the video. And it's looking like there's still a good growth trajectory. So who knows where it will grow into the next 12 months. But no, that video has done really well, went a lot more viral than any of our expectations in the team. And we're learning a lot from it.
Yeah. And do you know why? Because you come across as genuine. Like you seem really real in that video. And I can't say the same about all YouTubers. And just very humble. And I think that's what really resonates with people who watch it.
I think humility is so refreshing.
Yes.
You know, in a world where ego can take precedent, I think being humble, not forgetting where you have come from, is very refreshing, especially for people who are at some level of success. I always say to people I work with that in today's world, it has never been easier to become successful, because if you want the route to become successful, you can go onto YouTube, you can read books, you can listen to podcasts like this, and you then have the resources and tools to apply it. The real challenge is, once you have become successful, can you remain who you were?
Exactly.
Can you remember where you've come from? Because it can change who you are. It can corrupt a lot of people.
Absolutely. And we have seen that a lot. I know, well, you live in London, but you have a Chinese background.
Yeah.
How much of your Chinese-ness, if you could call it that, has influenced you as a person and your coaching philosophy?
I would say to some degree. So my parents are Malaysian Chinese. I was born in the UK. And I would say the part of my culture that has grown with me has been the hard work side of things. That has been a consistent through my childhood, through my teenage years, and through my adult life. The one thing that has changed is a bit of rebellious within me, because when I grew up, I had this mistaken belief, and I'm sure many children, especially those from Asian parents, can relate, were seduced by the idea that success was defined by a job title. Be a banker, be a lawyer, be a doctor, be an accountant. So I fell into banking when I graduated from university, did that for just shy of 10 years, but found it very unfulfilling. And it was at that point, when the financial crisis happened, that I started to question my choices in life. And I quickly realized that longer term, I wanted to work for myself. I didn't know yet what that was, but I just knew it didn't lay in working for someone else. And so I started exploring and trying things, and I decided to quit the world of work and start running my own business. And it was tough, because you don't always get the support of your parents when you first start, but to have that belief in yourself that you were meant for something more. And that's the part that went against my culture, because they very much wanted me to pursue certain jobs. But the one thing that has stuck is this ethic of hard work. Nice.
Yeah, I applaud you on having the courage to take that leap. I'm sure it wasn't easy, especially, financially. And I'm not sure if you had a family by then, or were you?
No, it was just myself and my girlfriend at the time. Okay. So it was.
And I'm guessing she was supportive.
She was very supportive. I think actually that when I think about the environment you have around you, having a good life partner is so crucial.
Yes.
Because when they support, encourage, and challenge you, you feel compelled to do more.
Yes.
But when they limit and question your choices, sometimes you feel very risk averse. So having that support behind me was instrumental in driving me to where I am today.
Is she also a coach into personal growth? And
no, so we met at university, and then we both started in finance. I quit first, and before I could afford to hire people into my team to capture content, she was the one that was at the events I spoke at, capturing photos and videos on her smartphone, and kind of really helping me at the beginning. And I remember one weekend after she attended a few events I spoke at, she said to me, "Simon, I think I'm gonna quit my job as well." And I said, "Go for it. Start exploring, start seeing what you want to do." And so she slowly transitioned out of employment as well to start her own business. And it was in marketing. So it's helping other people understand how to build out digital campaigns. And funnily enough, it was her that also inspired me to start my YouTube channel, because she started hers 2 years before mine. she grew it to 10,000 subscribers. And I said, wow, you know, if you can grow it to 10,000 subscribers, that inspires me to start committing some energy into it.
Yeah.
And so we kind of worked together on both our channels. And the funny thing is that in the same weekend, we both passed 100,000 subscribers in exactly the same weekend.
Wow.
Not planned, but it just turned out that way.
What's that saying? Behind every powerful man is an even more powerful woman. Is that
Absolutely.
what the saying is? I think it's something like that.
I just think it just shows that if you're going to succeed as a couple, it's about working together as a team.
Yes.
And that's the way we see it. It's not about I'm better than her or she's better than me. Of course, we will be better in certain departments and skills than each other.
You complement
and that's
each
where
other.
you complement.
Yeah.
But the way we see it is that we're a team. So when I win, we win. When she wins, we win. If either of us loses or fails at certain points in the journey, we both learn together. And there will be seasons where she will need my support more, and there will be seasons where I will need her support more. And that's how you operate as a team.
I love that. Both of you are very lucky indeed, because so many single people are struggling out there to find their, you know, the one, and it's not so easy. But I think keeping everything that you just said in mind, someone who supports your journey, someone who compliments you, those are the key drivers for a successful relationship, rather than superficial things.
There has to be compliments, but fundamentally you have to have shared values.
Yes.
You know, if one of you is focused on becoming the best version you can be, and the other one has values that are opposite to that, then at some point there is going to be disagreement.
Yes.
And you're not going to agree on the best way forward. And if you cannot move forward in a united way, at some point you're going to go your separate ways. And this is why having similar values is more important than having similar skill sets or interests or passions, because it's actually those variety of interests that create some spice in a relationship.
Yes.
If you're exactly the same, I mean, it's not very much a fun relationship.
That's true. But for that to happen, you have to have a certain degree of self-awareness to know what your values are. And I know you talk about that in your book, Energize. You talk about like how enhancing your self-awareness and adopting a curious perspective on life is essential to self-improvement. So I'd love for you to tell us more about that and the importance of self-awareness in our evolution.
Self-awareness is crucial. Simply put, you cannot have self-development without self-awareness, because awareness is the beginning of true wisdom. It is understanding yourself, who you are, what your strengths and what your weaknesses are. Once you know where you are right now today, you can then create a plan on how to move forward to where you want to be. But a lot of us aren't doing the crucial inner work of understanding who we are. We want all of these desires we have, but we aren't honest about where we are in this moment. If we are, then we can approach our future with humility. But you're never going to achieve your desires and goals if you're moving forward with ego. Because what happens is you are going to face challenges, setbacks, and obstacles, guaranteed. But it is how you respond to them that determines how fast you move. And a lot of us, if we haven't done that self-awareness work, we just complain. We say, why not me? Why aren't I moving as fast as him or her?
Or you blame it on other people.
You blame it on other people, things, or anything outside of your inner locus of control. And that isn't healthy, because you're going to move forward with toxicity inside of you, a blame and complain attitude. But if you understand that there is so much you don't know, and that you move forward with gratitude and humility, what you will find is that you will very quickly become a magnet of opportunity.
What if you're dealing with someone who does not want to do that inner excavation? Have you come across people like that?
There are. There are people. I have not said yes to everyone. When people approach me and say, hey, I would love to be coached by you, I'd love to be mentored by you, I've not said yes to everyone, because you can tell very quickly if somebody is still coming from a place of ego and who is not ready to do the work. And it's common. A lot of people say, I really want to help my brother, I really want to help my parent, I really want to help my close friend to change.
Yeah.
And I say the best thing you can do is to be the example of the change you want them to be.
Okay.
Because you cannot change somebody who ultimately does not want to change, as much as you try. All you can do is be the light and let them own that journey. When they come to you and say, hey, I really like what you're up to these days. You're achieving amazing things. I would love to learn a little bit about how you've done so. Then they're a bit more ready for that change. But if they're not, there's nothing you can do or say that will change that until they are ready internally.
Yeah, that's a shame, because sometimes you really love someone and you want them to change, but they don't have that willingness to do it.
And this is why the best thing we can do is get them to see the result of what that change could look like. If we embody that, and this is why I often say to people that if you want to lead others, it begins with leading yourself first and leading yourself powerfully. Because when you show up in the best way you can, anyone that comes into your orbit, they will be infected with your energy in a positive way. They will say, wow, look at what you've done. Look at how you've changed. Look at how you've transformed. Can you share a little bit about how you've done so with me? And that's when they're ready. That's what we have to do first. Be that change.
Yeah.
And then that will influence them to be interested in how to get a little bit of what you have.
So model that behavior. That's what a lot of parents are told, right? Yeah. Model good behavior to your kids.
And this is what I've learned as a parent. We've got a 4.5-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And one thing I've learned is
She's
that
adorable.
children, thank you, children never listen to what parents tell them to do.
Yeah.
But what they do is they model parents' behavior. And it's the same when you go into a company. You know, if your C-level executives are saying do one thing, but their actions and their behavior show something opposite, guess what we do? We follow the behavior, not what we're told.
Yes.
And so it's the same thing if you broaden that out to life. People look at models in society and we call them inspirations or role models. And the reason we call them models in society is because they give us a blueprint of what can be. And it's the same thing for us. If we want to change people in our close community, within our friendship circles, we have to first be that model.
I love that. And I know you talk about people who energizes and people who drain us. So we would essentially need to become energizes, people who really fill a room with light and to model good behavior and to just inspire people with the way we are conducting our life. And the drainers are the ones who sap our energy and really like, I guess you could call them toxic. How can we become more aware of the way people around us are impacting our energy?
So energy is infectious, but at the same time it is neutral, which means that whether you have positive or negative energy around you, you cannot help but be more like that type of energy. And this is why we have to be so careful about the things and people we spend time around. And if we look at environment from a macro level, there are aspects of our environment that we can control and aspects that we cannot control. So the things that we cannot control might be your boss, your colleagues, your family members. You can't just substitute them out. I mean, they're part of your family, they're part of your life. The things that you can control, you control them in the best way you can. You say no to the people that are draining you. You say yes to the communities and groups and people that actually energize you. For the part of your environment that you cannot control, once you're aware of what drains you, you then want to focus on how you can dilute the impact of that energy. So if I know I'm going to visit a family member who happens to be toxic or is a natural drain of my energy, what I might do is put on some motivational music, hear an inspiring podcast before I visit them. And then after I visit them, I might have a meeting with a friend who naturally energizes me. So I'm diluting the impact of that energy ahead of time, knowing that when I go and catch up with my family member, I'm going to come out feeling a little low on energy. Another way we can do so is that if we have to catch up with someone, we can play with the questions we ask. You know, if coming to the end of the week, you catch up with a friend and you know this particular person is naturally negative, so that when you say, how was your week? They might say, this didn't happen. I didn't get the promotion. The project didn't get finished. I lost a client. What you can do is maybe tweak the question to move their focus in their subconscious to something that is positive. So instead of, how was your week? You could say instead, what went well for you this week? And just see what they come out with. Very subtle reframe.
Yeah.
And so you can have a little bit of fun sometimes in changing the question you ask. What are you most excited about in the coming week? And so we are in control of the question. Of course, we don't control the response, but we can stack the odds in our favor that perhaps the conversation might be a little bit more energizing.
I love that. But the problem is, Simon, people don't really put enough thought into what they're saying because they are so distracted. In our attention economy, people are just vying for our mental bandwidth. And for this to happen, you have to be mindful. You got to take that time to really think about, okay, how can I frame this in a way that would elicit the kind of response that I would like? So I know that this is something you really highlight in the book, taking the time to slow down and embrace moments of intentional rest. And you say that it's absolutely necessary for us to live a life that is, in integrity with what we really want. So how can we take that time to really stop, smell the roses, so to speak? I know for me, I have to remind myself all the time because I'm a high achiever. It's like I'm like a go-getter, and I have a tendency to burn myself out, but I've become a lot more careful about that, to add more balance to my life and look at other areas of my life where I can spend my time and my energy so that I create that balance. So
you are not alone. So many ambitious people I know, they always say to me, one of the biggest challenges they have is taking time off.
Yes.
Is disconnecting. And that is because when you are a high achiever, naturally you feel that doing means you're productive. That when you're not doing, that equals unproductive.
Yeah.
And it's because we've been growing up in this culture where business equals productivity. But actually, if you go back in history and look at those breakthroughs that have changed humankind, what you will notice is that many of those breakthroughs didn't come from somebody sitting in front of their laptop or their desk or reading books. It came from periods of disconnection. Isaac Newton, sitting underneath the tree, apple falling on his head, gravity. Archimedes, sitting in the bathtub, eureka. He had that idea for displacement theory. Thomas Edison, fishing with no bait, so not even the fish would disturb him. He had those moments of clarity and insight. And so what we've got to understand is that rest shouldn't be a reward for working hard all year. Rest is as integral as periods of deep work. Work and rest are partners of the same team. You need to understand that, yes, you have to have periods where you work hard and you are focused, but also periods of intentional rest. Just imagine what would happen to an athlete if they worked non-stop before the main event. What would happen when they get to the main event? They would be exhausted, and there would be a higher chance that they would be injured before the main event because of overwork. But yet, we do that. But we can learn so much from the sports world. If they're doing that to condition their bodies to be in the best shape, how can we do that to condition our bodies and mind to be in the best shape possible so we can show up as our best selves?
That's so true. That is so true. I love that analogy. How do we know how much rest is enough, though?
It's different for all of us. Because just like some of us are morning people, some of us are night owls, that will be different for each of us. And again, it goes back to this idea of awareness. It's understanding how can I work with my body and not against it. And as you go through each day, week and month, you'll notice the periods of your schedule where you have naturally high levels of energy and periods where you have low levels of energy. Once you get a bit of an understanding of where those periods are, you can then start scheduling your diary to better suit those moments. So to give an example, I was doing some work with a company in the UK, and I sat down with the leadership team and I said to them, when do you hold your most important weekly meetings? And they said to me, we hold them first thing on a Monday morning when everyone is back in the office, and we want to plan for the week ahead and make sure we're all focused. And I followed up with the question, what do you think the energy level is like for your employees first thing on a Monday morning? And they went, I think most of them might still have hangovers from the weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
They might still be slowly getting into the new week. And I said, so on the one hand, you want them to contribute their best ideas, participate, and be focused in the most important weekly meeting. Yet on the other hand, they're also at their lowest level of energy. How do the two marry together? And then so what they did is they changed that weekly meeting to later in the week just by simply understanding the energy levels of their employees. So once you start to get that data and you understand yourself at a deeper level, then you can start changing how you schedule things in your diary.
Yeah, that's something that really stood out to me in your book, you talked about the importance of managing your energy versus managing your time, which goes against the conventional advice, which is like you should manage your time to the T. But that fails to take into consideration how you function, when is your peak time to work, and when is when your energy dips during the day. I think that is so key, and
it's so important.
It was that missing piece for me for a very long time. And I learned about biorhythms. I learned about I forget the name of the doctor, but he categorizes people into different like animals. Are you a bear? Are you a lion? Are you? And that correlates to when your energy peaks and when it goes down. So as I gain more information, I found myself being able to be more efficient with the way I do my work and things like that. So,
and it's not to say that you can't manage your time. It's that I think energy comes first. The issue with time management is that it assumes that your energy is constant throughout the day. So you might open your diary and you start blocking out all the time in a day. But if you don't understand how your energy fluctuates, you could put a 4 o'clock schedule to go to the gym. But if the day has been busy, you feel exhausted by the time it's got to 3:30, what are the odds you're actually going to go to the gym at 4? Very low.
Yeah.
But if you know that it's going to be a busy day, you can put the gym first. You can switch things around, knowing that your energy is probably not going to be very high by the time you've got for a very busy day. So this is why energy management is so crucial. And also, when you have the energy, you put more into 1 hour than you would in 4 hours of unfocused energy. That's the difference.
Yeah. You got to keep the phones away. You got to keep everything away if you want that focused hour though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Distraction management.
Yeah.
You said the word attention earlier, and it reminded me of an article I read in the Guardian newspaper in the UK, and it said that the average attention span for humans have now dropped to below 8 seconds. The goldfish attention span, 9 seconds. Now, for me, what that shows is there's 2 challenges. The first is for ourselves. How do we manage our own attention now? With so many demands on our attention, from the notifications on our phone, from demands from clients and colleagues and so on, how do we manage our own attention? That's the first part. The second is, if you are running a business, how do you get the attention of your customers, of your prospects, so they look at your product or service and say, hey, you have what I need. How do I do business with you? So there's 2 challenges here for the self and then for marketing your ideas, products and services.
Yeah, that was something else that really caught my eye. The idea of knowing how to not just sell yourself to others, but to sell yourself to you.
That's where selling begins.
I've never heard it phrased that way. And Simon, I read a lot of personal growth books and I was like, selling yourself, you have to sell yourself to you. You got to be convinced of your value and your worth.
Yeah.
I mean, you know that they don't really believe in themselves, even though they're trying to, convince you otherwise. So, how does one go about selling themselves to themselves?
Selling yourself to yourself begins with knowing and trusting that you have value to add, however small. A lot of us don't even believe we have value before we've put ourselves out there. And that translates itself into energy. Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you did, people will forget what you said, but they will never forget the way you made them feel. And that is a transfer of energy. When you believe in your value, what you have to offer the world, then when you go out into the world, whether it's across social media, whether it's speaking to someone, whether it's being in a conversation with people feel that energy because you believe in what you have to offer the world. And it tells me that people do not buy what you sell as much as they buy into your energy. You might sell the same thing as someone else, but what they're really buying is their energy. Do I like this person? Yeah. Would I like being around this person if I were to go into a collaboration partnership?
Yeah, even
you're buying energy.
Social, personal relationships.
It's part of your brand. What is the energy that you are admitting to the world?
How do we find that out, though? Because we would have our own biases when we are assessing ourselves.
We would, and I know I have my own biases as well, and this is why feedback is so crucial. Yeah. Get feedback from both those who know you well, but also those who don't know you as well. And this is why I find content so powerful. I will put out content, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram or LinkedIn or through my newsletter, and the feedback from people, in many cases I've never met before, will tell me whether I'm hitting the right notes, whether it's struck a chord with them, or how I can improve for the next one. And that for me is where I learn. I learn in public. People give me live feedback. There's nothing better than live feedback.
Yes.
And I take that on board, every single comment I read, and I say, okay, this works really well, or this didn't work so well. What can I improve the next time? And that for me is where the real learning takes place. It is always outside the formal walls of a classroom, because classrooms and formal education can only take you so far. The outside world is where the real education begins.
So true. But you have to find the right people to talk to, though.
You do.
Yeah.
And for me, if I'm going to accept criticism, in most cases, I think it always comes better and more constructive from people who are ahead of you, who know what it's like to be on the journey you're on, because they've been there. They've gone through the ups and downs. They've become a better person because of it, and they can impart that wisdom back to you because you're following in that same path.
But they've earned their stripes. So
they've earned it, yeah.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do is take advice from people who've never done what you want to do, who've never even tried or had the courage to take that first step. That is the last person you want to take advice from.
Yeah, you want someone who is in the battlefield as well.
Yeah, fellow gladiators.
Fellow gladiators, yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. Simon, do you ever do any energy cleanses? I don't know how much of metaphysics goes into the work that you do, but do you do anything to kind of clear the junk? Like if you feel like
I do. I would do what I call simple and accessible activities, things like meditation, journaling. I think journaling is so powerful. Simple, but not many people are consistent at doing it. But it is like free therapy. When you put down all of your thoughts onto paper, you have this ability to then dissect your thoughts, to really understand where those thoughts are coming from. And the lesson I took from those years of journaling, which I share in the book, is that you are both the sculptor and the sculptor. Because when you write your thoughts onto paper, you realize you are not actually your thoughts. You are simply the observer of your thoughts. And you at any point can choose a different thought over another. So if you currently have a negative thought, when you write it down, you realize this is not very productive for me. This is holding me back. So let me choose a new thought. And when you choose a new thought, you give birth to new action, choices, and behaviors.
Yeah.
And thereby, you change your future. We live in a thought-generated world, and that means we can change our reality by changing our thoughts.
Is it that simple, though? What if we have self-sabotaging patterns that get in the way?
We will always have self-sabotaging patterns.
We have an inner critic, or we have issues from our past, childhood wounds. Because sometimes, when I have also trained to be a coach, and I appreciate the whole idea of reframing and switching from a negative to a better thought that's healthier for us. But I always felt like there would be a tendency for a client to not follow through, even though they know it on a conscious level that they need to do this to lead a more productive and happier life. They end up shooting themselves in the foot. So
people do.
How do you deal with people like that?
First step is to understand what is stopping them. So a question I might ask a client if they said that to me and told me they haven't followed through with some of the things they actually said to themselves they were going to do, is simply, what is stopping you, really? What is really stopping you? And just open up the space for them to speak into. And for each client, it may be different. When we talk about traumas, it could be anything from personal, professional traumas, and then just to really understand the impact that has had, and also for them to understand what that has cost and could cost them, and how to change the relationship with it. Because when you've gone through a trauma that you haven't really explored or understood, you only end up having a singular relationship with it, which is you see it through only one lens. But actually, you can see any experience in life from a multitude of different lenses. So it's really to ask them, what else could that experience mean? What would that experience mean to someone else who was connected to that traumatic experience? Because once they understand that perspective can change their relationship with it, perhaps they can move forward with a healthier understanding of that experience.
Okay, so helping them see it from multiple perspectives might give them kind of like a bird's eye view of their situation.
Yeah, so take them out of it, because when you're in a situation, it always feels very painful. It's like when you experience...
You get tunnel vision, right?
You get tunnel vision. It's like when you experience a challenge or setback. Now, at a macro level, you understand that challenges are healthy to grow. Unless you're challenged, how do you know how strong you are? I mean, we know all of these as facts.
Sure.
But when you are going for a challenge in the moment, whether it's a loss, a grieving, something unexpected being thrown your way, it is always going to be painful in that moment. But if you have that ability to see it through different perspectives and take yourself out of the situation, then you can see things from a more objective lens. And that's when you can start to choose how you want to build a relationship with that that's going to be healthier for you to move forward. And this is awareness management. This is being more aware about how that experience is affecting your thinking and the way you move forward in life.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for explaining that. I love that you start the book talking about health, because I believe that health, physical well-being is a foundational piece when it comes to energy management. You share a personal story about a wake-up call that you had that prompted you to prioritize your health.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I started in the financial industry at what was probably the worst possible time, the middle of 2007, a year before the financial crisis swept across the planet. My first job was at a company called Lehman Brothers, which collapsed in September 2008. From there, I moved to another firm, and I thought, this is a chance to build my career again. But it was very toxic. This was a financial industry, long hours, hard work, very competitive. And I was just burning out every single day, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And there was one day, I remember towards the end of a particular year, coming up to Christmas, heavy social season, and I was going to an event that night. And I texted my girlfriend at the time and said to her, I'm going to take the last train home. So she was expecting me to be back by 1 to 2 early morning, 1 to 2 a.m. I went down to this club and my phone loses signal. I check in my bag, and before I know it, I'm drinking, I'm trying to escape the hell I was in, and before I know it, when I was coming out of the club and getting into a taxi, it was already mid-morning. And I get back and, it wasn't a pretty sight. And I realized from the experience I had having to tell her what had happened, that I was going to lose more than just my job if I didn't address what was going on. And it was a huge wake-up call, because I realized that I was just killing my future, that this career wasn't for me, that this industry perhaps was affecting more than just my personal life, and that I had to change things. So that really was the first wake-up call to addressing my health, because for me, that was the obvious place to start. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was surviving on junk food. I wasn't exercising on a regular basis. And so for me, if I could get that right first, then I believe that everything else would then fall into place. So that was where physical energy was the first step in changing and transforming my future.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you got that insight sooner than later. For a lot of people, they get it much later in their life, when sometimes it's hard to kind of reverse the damage that's been done from that. What was it that got you to that level of insight, that you realized that, oh my goodness, that this is not working anymore? Because the reason I ask that is because there are probably people listening to this who are in that position. They're in a very, in a career or a profession that is really taking a lot out of them. And they've got to pay the bills somehow, right? Not everyone has the courage, or maybe they don't have the, they can't do that. They maybe either because of internal blocks or because of their circumstances. So what would you say to somebody like that who wants to make that change, but they somehow feel restricted?
For me, I was very fortunate. It was hard hitting. And I think we have to remind ourselves how fortunate we are to be alive and how short life is. When I was going through that period of feeling lost, of not knowing what I wanted to do, or feeling like giving up, I decided to take a trip back to my hometown. So I was working in London, but I grew up in the southeast of England. So I took a trip back to my hometown to visit my mum's grave, and she passed when I was 17. Okay. So I went back home to just visit her grave, and it reminded me at a very important point in my journey that life is fragile. Do I want to get to the end of my life and regret not having tried stuff, not having lived? How would she feel, if I got to the end of my life and I'm just living a miserable one, only looking forward to the weekends and holidays and just living a very miserable existence? And it got me thinking that if life was to end tomorrow, would I be happy? Would I honestly be happy with the choices I made? And the answer was a resolute no. And once I understood just how short life is, that's when I began to intentionally channel my energy into truly living. I said, what is the first thing I've got to address? I might not know yet what I want to do long term, which I didn't. I just knew I didn't want to work for anyone else. I wanted to work for myself.
You knew what you didn't want to do.
I knew what I didn't want, but I didn't know what I wanted. But I did know the first thing that needed to be addressed was my health. I needed to get that sorted first, and then I could then explore all of the other interests I may have had. But it had to start with my health. And so I realized that if I wanted to live a long life, if I wanted to start a family, if I wanted to see my children grow up, I had to get my health in order. And then, fortunately, once I started focusing on that, I got the inspiration and the energy to then start thinking about what I wanted to do long term. I then read books, I changed the environment I was in, I went to seminars, I then explored coaching, and then that inspired me to quit the financial industry.
Yeah. I know that in Buddhism, they have this meditation where you meditate on your death. Yeah. Or there's even an exercise where you write your own obituary, or you kind of, it sounds really morbid, but that gives you perspective, and you look at death in the face and say, like, hey, this is going to be everyone's fate, including mine. So
yeah, death.
What can I do to make the most of life? Yeah, sorry,
death, and knowing how short life is, and knowing that there is going to be an end point, actually makes life meaningful. Because if there was no end point, if you lived forever, where is the urgency? There's always next year. You can keep going next year for eternity because there's no end point. But when there is an end point, it gives a sense of urgency. You've got to take action now in order to create a better future. In fact, I believe that your ability to collapse that gap between idea and execution is one of the most important skills that you can develop.
So true.
For too many of us, that gap between idea and execution is wide. Yeah. If you can narrow it, you're going to move faster, but also you're going to accumulate a lot of knowledge in a short space of time. So the first thing to understand is life is short. Would you get to the end of your life and have regrets? Or would you get to the end of your life and say, thank God I started, thank God I began.
Yeah.
I'm so glad the old me took action. Because the habits you embrace each day are either contributing to a legacy you can be proud of, or they're contributing to a mountain of regrets. And then the second is, what one tiny piece of action can you take today? Just one. We're not asking for a lot, we're just asking for one. And then tomorrow, another one. And the day after, another bit of action. Now, if you add all of that up, a year from now, that is 365 steps that you have taken. Now imagine multiplying that over another few years. Imagine where and who you could become. Yeah. That is powerful to think about.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're making a deposit in your account, right? You're making that small deposits, and it accumulates over time. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I don't know about you, Simon, but the older that you get and the shorter your time horizon becomes, I think that urgency increases, especially those milestone birthdays, like turning 30, turning 40. It's like, whoa, where did all the time go?
And if you want motivation, what I encourage you to do, and it's an image I share in a book actually, is you do a circle for every year. So let's say the average lifespan is 80 years. You do circles for 80 years, and then you shade out every year that you've lived so far. And then you look at how many empty circles you have left to go. Now, if that doesn't inspire or motivate you, I don't know what will. Because whenever I cross out another circle, I'm inspired to take action. I'm inspired to be bold and courageous, because time is against me.
Yes.
You don't have forever.
That's true. But you say that it's important to have a strong vision as well.
Yeah.
Something that can pull you into the future, because I think that's something that can keep people stagnant when they don't have something to look forward to.
It's important, yeah, because so many of us, the reason we don't actually make progress is because we are working from our past self. So you might say to yourself, I've never had the opportunities. I'm not that sort of person. I've always got it wrong. I've never succeeded doing this. Now that mindset is working from your past, and it's never going to help you move forward, because when you're working from your past, you constantly have to motivate and push yourself. Yes. And we know that never lasts. But what you want to do is work from your future. When you work from your future, from your vision, it's different. It creates a pull. On one side, you have to push yourself. When you're working from a vision from the future, it pulls you forward. In the same way that you might book a 2-week holiday to somewhere nice and warm and a 5-star luxury resort, even if you have to wake up at 4 a.m. to make the flight, somehow you wake up at 4 and you make the flight.
True, yeah.
You don't have to push yourself.
You don't have to.
The vision of the holiday pulls you forward. Mm-hmm. And this is why when you have clarity on what it is you want to achieve and who you want to be, the clearer you can get on that, the easier it becomes for that to pull you forward. And when you're pulled forward, those obstacles and those challenges will feel minute in comparison to the size of that vision.
That is so true, and I can attest to that for sure. But the key is finding that vision, finding that thing that makes you just gets your juices going. You know, it's like, how do you help clients find that vision? Like, what if they say, oh, I don't know what I want, or they just sit there, they're just like a blank slate, they have no idea what makes them excited. And how do you get them to create that vision?
It's interesting, because while on the one hand I say you have to be clear on what your vision is, at the same time the question you want to ask straight away is not what is your vision. What you want to actually ask someone is, number one, what are you most curious about right now? Right now, what are you most curious about? And second, if you could have a dream of yours become a reality, what would that be? Which is very different questions. Because one taps into the present, which is what are you most curious about right now? Forget the future, forget the past. Right now, what gets you most curious? And someone might say, well, yeah, I'm really interested about exploring this or learning about this topic. And once they start learning or exploring a particular area, that's what builds clarity into the vision. Oh, this could be something I want to do long term. And the dream taps into their subconscious. Deep down, we all have some dream. What is that? You think so? I think so. Everybody has a dream.
Even like the homeless person.
Everybody has a dream. For some people, it could be, my dream is to become a house husband to a very successful wife. For other people, it could be, I want to run a multi-million-dollar business. Everyone has a different dream.
Or a great mom or a great
absolutely.
Dad. Yeah.
We're not here to tell people what your dream should and shouldn't be, but people all have different dreams. It's up to them to decide what that is, but most of us don't know what it is immediately.
Yeah, and we allow social conditioning to impact what we think and our vision, you know? Like when I was deciding on a major in college, everyone was like, go do business, you know, you're going to make money. That's easy money. And then I later realized that I'm actually a creative person. I don't do well with numbers. And but that came through the process of, you know, my own personal unfoldment and, you know, building self-awareness. But originally I listened to what people told me that I should be doing. And I'm sure that's the case for everybody. So that's another thing you have to contend with, in addition to understanding what really drives you.
And it isn't easy.
Yeah.
It isn't easy. You know, when I was young, just like yourself, I was born very creative. My dream when I was a child was to be an artist. I loved painting and drawing. Yeah. I won a local competition in my hometown, and I thought to myself,
you're multi-talented.
Yeah, when I grow up, I'm going to be an artist. But my parents were always like, keep art as a hobby, focus on the subjects that will help you make money. And so I did.
They're kind of not wrong though, right? Probability, when you look at the probability, it's like,
I can also see where they're coming from though. And it's interesting because my parents were immigrants to the UK.
Exactly,
and
mine too.
What's ironic is they took a lot of risk to move to an entirely new country, new way of life. They didn't know anyone, so they had to build their friendship circles from scratch. In fact, my dad was the only one from his family that moved that far across the world. And so he was holding down multiple jobs at the beginning when we were born, just to help raise the family. And so you can kind of see where they're coming from. They took all of this risk. They want you to then grow up as a child with safety, have a secure future. And so getting a stable job with well-paid salary sounds, I guess, common to them.
Sure.
But what you come to realize is that if you're not doing something that makes you feel alive, you're never really going to show up as your best.
Exactly.
And what I learned as I moved away from there and went into business is that money, as a mentor of mine once said, a guy called Bob Berg, he said, money is an echo of value. The more value that you put into the world, the more you get paid. And that value can be anything from the art you put out into the world, the strategy that you share with someone to help them build their business, the products you make and people buy them. Whatever that value is, if you can provide significant value because of particular skill set or talent you have, people will pay money for it.
Okay, Simon, something else you mentioned in the book was about finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. And I find that so important because right now a lot of people are jaded and they kind of walk around like robots, or they're on their phone, and it's hard for them to pick up on the beauty, the wonder, and the magic that makes life what it is. So tell me, why do you think that is so important when it comes to living at a high energy level?
Because I think that when you live from a place of gratitude, you realize you live in abundance. I was taught this a lot by my daughter. Before we had children, it's very easy to work all the hours. You can always work into the evening, you can always work weekends, you can miss holidays in order to hit certain deadlines. But once you have a child, your window of doing work suddenly closes. You only have a few hours a day, and then you pick up your child from school, you come home, you want to spend time with them. The weekends, they want to spend time with you. And so she really made me understand what it is to be present, to be in the moment. And she made me realize that when you're grateful for what you have, and it's hard because when we're in the pursuit of always having more and getting to somewhere, we forget what we already have right in front of us. But when we do, we realize we have everything we already need. And there's this balance in the sense that you want to be content with what you already have, but also be excited for the future. And when you have both those elements in place, that is when you end up experiencing flow. You're in this flow state. You're content with the now, but you're excited about the future. The issue becomes when either of those disconnect. If you're happy with the now, but you have nothing to look forward to, then what's going to propel you forward? If you're excited about the future, but you're stressed about now, and you don't really like where you are, you're going to be constantly frustrated because you hope for a future because you're just trying to escape from where you are now. But when you're content with what you have, when you're happy with what is around you, and you have an exciting future to work towards, that's when you can live and flow a lot more.
Yeah, I'm having a light bulb moment. Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. Yeah, but it is hard for people to appreciate the present moment because there's this phenomenon of FOMO, and with social media, you're seeing people live a great life, and especially for the younger generation, it can be hard to achieve that state. It
is hard, and you have to understand, again, it goes back to knowing what you can and can't control. So when you talk about going into social media and having FOMO and looking at what everyone else is doing, the fact is you cannot not do that. You will always jump on your phone, go onto Instagram, go onto social media platforms, and you will see what everyone else is doing. That behavior won't change. But what you can do is change how you manage that behavior. So instead of looking at other people's life for comparison, look at their lives for inspiration. So a lot of people look at someone's life and go, oh, it's going to be years before I can have that. Why can't I experience that life? Instead of asking yourself those questions, instead ask, what are they doing that I can do more of? How did they get there that I can learn from? Because then they become a source of inspiration and learning to help you get close to that sort of life that you also want to be living.
Yeah. That does take a level of emotional maturity, though, to not let your ego get in the way.
This is where emotional energy comes in. Remember, we got physical, mental, emotional, spiritual.
Yes.
Emotional energy is the relationship you have with yourself and other people. If you have a healthy relationship with yourself and other people, whether they are family, friends, people you follow on social media, then you're able to have better relationships with them, and learn from them to make you a better person.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that definitely takes some work, especially if you have an ego that is really big and you source your identity and from other people, and you need that validation to feed you. It can be tough to reach that level of contentment, and I see this a lot, especially in very materialistic groups and societies, which I have been exposed to, where it's about what bags you carry, the cars you drive. It can be hard for them to appreciate what they have and find that sense of peace and contentment with the way life is right now, because they're just busy chasing the next shiny object, and that's a horrible way to live. Really,
it's horrible because you're living for other people. You're not living for you.
I see that a lot.
Yeah, and this is why you probably come across this before. Bronnie Ware's book about the top regrets of the dying. The number one regret, and still to today, of those who are dying is, I wish I lived a life more true to myself than a life lived for others. It's still a top regret for the dying. And that is because we're still so conditioned to seek validation from other people. But for me, it's about understanding, what would life feel like when instead of seeking validation from others, you trust your heart more, you listen to your own wisdom more? How much lighter would that feel? How much better would life be for you? Because at the end of the day, you want to be proud of the life you lived, not whether you have the approval of other people. Because otherwise, that's not a good way to live life.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah. And it can be more challenging if you're in a collectivistic society like the Asian culture, as opposed to an individualistic like the UK or the US. Yeah. I think it can be more challenging for people like us who come from those cultures.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's funny because I started off just like everyone else, seeking validation. And then after
it's a rite of passage, I think.
It's a rite of passage. And then after a while, I was like, okay, I'm just going to focus on me now. And so people joke about my drawer at home. It just has 8 black t-shirts. I've just got a few jeans and shorts. Yeah. And that's my look. If you look at all of my social media accounts, in 99% of the photos and videos you see on there, I'm in a black t-shirt.
I've noticed that.
And jeans or shorts. It's very simple and minimalist.
Keeps it simple, yeah.
And so I remember there was one event I was invited to speak at, and everyone was in suits and everyone was kind of dressed in very formal wear. Yeah. And I turned up onto stage with t-shirt and jeans. And after I came down, one of the speakers came up to me and said, "Simon, thank you so much for helping me win a bet." I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I've been following your social media accounts, and I had a friendly bet with a colleague of mine." Yeah. And I said, "I bet you there's going to be a Chinese guy coming today wearing a black t-shirt and jeans." Okay. He didn't disappoint. And so over time, that just became part of my brand. What started off just as, I'm just going to wear for me what's comfortable, has now become part of my brand.
Just out of curiosity, I want to know the psychology behind that, besides it being the fact that it makes your life simple.
The psychology behind it for me is decision making. Is that the human brain makes so many decisions every single day, from the trivial to the complex. And if I can start to eliminate the trivial, I give more energy in my mind to manage the complex. Because by the time we get to midday each day, I think how many trivial decisions you've had to make. What are you going to eat for lunch? What are you going to wear today? Who do you have to meet in the afternoon? Do you have time to cancel a meeting or not?
Decision fatigue.
But if you got a lot of those decisions back and you have the energy for the more complex, then you're able to make better decisions. Otherwise, what happens when you make those more complex decisions and choices, you're making them from a very stressed point.
So true. I think Obama used to do that. He had like just one type of suit, and Steve Jobs,
Mark Zuckerberg. I think there's a few other names as well. Yeah. Even my wife now has become more minimalistic in her wardrobe.
Really? It's harder for women though.
It's harder for women. What she's done is she creates certain sets of clothes where she can mix and match that she wears constantly, but she can still vary the colors and themes up. So she gets clothes.
Needs to do a video on that.
I have to tell her.
That, trust me, women would eat that for sure. Oh, well, Simon, I think we're out of time. I mean, I could talk to you all day, but, we have to bring this conversation to a close. Thank you so much for making the time to be here, to share your insights and your wisdom with us. I truly appreciate it.
My pleasure. And thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And I just want to let our viewers and listeners know, if you want to find ways to get invigorated in your life, please get a copy of Simon's new book, Energize, Make the Most of Every Moment. And if you're curious about his coaching programs and his services, visit his website, simonalexanderong.com. All the links will be in the show notes.